to the official Heisman Trophy podcast.
Chuck Conrad with a kickoff. Roy Evans, a strong leg, end over end. Sanders takes it 1 yard deep to the end zone. Up the middle, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. He's at the 40, he's at 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 45, 40, 50, 10, 5, touchdown, Cowboys. Just like last year, a clean start. Roll out.
Here's your host, Chris Houston.
Welcome back to the Heisman Trophy podcast, everybody. It's officially Heisman week. We have our 4 finalists: Notre Dame running back Jeremiyah Love, Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza, Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, and Ohio State quarterback Julian Sayin. Of course, we've already talked to 3 of those 4 players on the podcast this year. Tried really hard to get Diego Pavia, but the schedules just didn't align. And it just seems to me like it's shaping up to be a pretty close race. Now, I've been following the Heisman Trophy for most of my life, and let me tell you, this is a very different year than most years. The Heisman tends to be a canary in the coal mine for what's going on in college football, and so you started seeing in the late teens all these transfer players winning the Heisman became very normal. Now you're starting to see players from schools that don't typically compete for the trophy compete for the trophy. Now, Colorado had won a Heisman way back in 1994, but when Travis Hunter won it for the Buffaloes last year and Boise State's Ashton Jeanty finished a close second, it seemed to indicate to me that the blue blood powers in college football were starting to see their powers wane. Now, 2 of the Heisman Trophy finalists this year are from traditional powers. Of course, Jeremiyah Love is from Notre Dame and Julian Sayin plays for Ohio State. Both schools that have traditionally carried a lot of cachet when it comes to the Heisman vote. We're talking about 14 Heisman trophies between them. Nonetheless, it's quite possible that the top 2 spots in the vote could go to players from schools that have never won a Heisman. And it seems kind of weird until you go look at the team rankings and you see Indiana at number 1, schools like Texas Tech at number 4, Ole Miss at number 6, and Vanderbilt at number 14. And if you look at the production of these 4 finalists, you'll see that their overall statistics are a bit down compared to previous seasons. And I think this is a reflection of the overall slowdown or plateauing of offense in college football. And I think most of this has come about because of the playoffs and the incentives that it creates. It just may be a while before you see another Joe Burrow or Marcus Mariota. We've seen guys throw for 30 touchdowns and rush for 20 scores. I've got a feeling those days have mostly gone bye-bye. That all said, players are a product of their environment and they perform to the best of their abilities within those confines. And the 4 players that are in New York this week are the cream of the crop for college football in 2025. Now, some of you are probably new to this whole Heisman week thing. Let's give you a little rundown. On Friday, the 4 finalists will show up. There's going to be all kinds of events going on. There'll be a press conference. We're going to have video of that press conference over on our YouTube and TikTok channels. This is the night when a lot of the finalists are going to hang out with some of the past winners. On Saturday, the 4 players will wake up really early, do all kinds of media interviews. Their families will get a chance to see a Broadway play. There'll be all kinds of swag and goodies distributed from sponsors. They'll go to Lincoln Center and do a dress rehearsal, and then a few hours later, they'll do another press conference, and then at 7 o'clock, the 91st Heisman Trophy ceremony will get underway. It really is a whirlwind of a weekend, and for the player who is named the Heisman Trophy winner, there is little or no rest. Typically, after a post-ceremony press conference, the Heisman Trophy winner will go out on the town and celebrate with his teammates and his family and friends. And then we'll get up super early at the crack of dawn on Sunday to talk to ESPN, to talk to this podcast, to do a few other interviews. And then at noon on Sunday is the Heisman Legends Brunch, when that player will be formally inducted into the Heisman fraternity. Overall, the Heisman weekend is a true gauntlet for a Heisman Trophy winner. Once again, we're going to be posting tons of video content from the weekend on our YouTube and TikTok channels. We're going to set the scene. We're going to provide the atmosphere, hang out with the 4 finalists, chat with some Heisman legends. It's going to be awesome. For us, it's like Christmas coming a bit early. So be sure to like, subscribe, follow along to all our channels. Help us build our community of dedicated Heisman and college football fans. One other note about the Heisman weekend is we will be honoring the 25th anniversary of Florida State quarterback Chris Weinke's 2000 Heisman Trophy winning season, and we will be honoring Ohio State's Archie Griffin on the 50th anniversary of his second Heisman winning season, 1975. Next up, we've got a great feature on the history of the Heisman Trophy ceremony. If you're into college football, if you're into history, if you're into culture, This is going to be something that's going to really interest you. So we'll get it going right after these words from Archie Griffin.
This is Archie Griffin, 1974, 1975's Heisman Trophy winner, and you're listening to the official Heisman podcast.
You know, it's quite an event, the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Sometimes it's full of drama. Sometimes it's merely a celebration of the winner, a coronation, if you will. But it's always great to see all the finalists there dressed in their best, representing their schools along with their coaches in most cases. In general, this culmination of Heisman Week has become interwoven into the fabric of college football. It's something we do every year, and it's just a great tradition. And you know, like most traditions, it's something that has evolved over time. So let's look at that. Let's look at the history of the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're eagerly anticipating the crowning of this year's Heisman Trophy winner. And I'm right there with you. We all have our theories of who will win. We're not here to speculate, and we will wait as patiently as we can for ABC's telecast live from Jazz at Lincoln Center, which starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, December 13th. But what, you may ask, was the genesis for this huge national broadcast naming the winner of arguably sports' greatest individual award? Well, it all started as a luncheon. As most of you probably know by now, in 1935, the University of Chicago's Jay Berwanger became the first winner of the Heisman. Back then it was called the Downtown Athletic Club Trophy. A year later, the 13.5-inch statue became known as it is today as the Heisman Memorial Trophy. Berwanger found out he was the winner of this brand new award on November 29th, but he wasn't in New York until December 10th for the midday affair that was to honor him. He later said the biggest thrill of winning the award was getting to fly in an airplane for the first time en route to Manhattan. As thrills go in the 1930s, that was pretty swell. For the next 4 decades, Heisman winners were pretty much honored in the same way. The winner was announced in late November or early December, following the annual Army-Navy game, with the Heisman Trophy presentation typically 7 to 10 days later. Not until 1977 was the announcement made on the same date as the trophy given, when Texas's Earl Campbell was named the winner at the end of an hour-long CBS special. And it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill special, it was a variety show. And I don't know whose idea it was, but I'm here for it.
Here is the drag, see how it goes, down on the heels, up on the toes. That's the way to do the varsity drag.
Yes, that is Farrah Fawcett doing a song and dance at the Heisman Trophy ceremony in 1977. The show featured a weird mix of celebrities and sports figures. And in addition to announcing the Heisman Trophy winner, they also announced the winners of the other major awards in college football. Here's 1956 Heisman Trophy winner Paul Hornung with Mr. October, Reggie Jackson of the New York Yankees.
I think they're getting bigger every year. I don't think I'm going to argue with that, are you?
That's why I'm an ex-football player.
Yeah, you can still hit the low, fast one. Who could, 36 home runs in a World Series? Forget it. Go on, Reggie.
He's a good baseball player, but he quit. He was a high ball drinker and a low ball hitter.
Jay Berwanger was on hand to give the Heisman to Earl Campbell.
And now to announce the winner of this year's Heisman, we have someone very special here with us tonight. A man who was the first recipient of the Heisman Trophy 43 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jay Berwanger.
Thank you, O.J. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor for me to be able to announce the 43rd recipient of the Heisman Trophy, and it goes to Earl Campbell of the University of Texas.
I just had to share that ceremony as there's never been another Heisman Trophy ceremony quite like that one. Of course, it wasn't a live announcement. It was taped, and Earl Campbell knew he was the winner going in. And of course, there were no other Heisman Trophy finalists present at the show. But they knew how to have fun in the late 70s, didn't they? It wasn't until 1981 that a Heisman Trophy winner was announced live on national television. USC's Marcus Allen was in New York City for the announcement, which took place at the Downtown Athletic Club. And this really set the stage for what was to come the next year, 1982, which was the beginning of the Heisman Trophy ceremony as we know it today. For the first time, there were Heisman Trophy finalists who were invited to New York, and they took part in the ceremony that was shown live on national television. That was the year Herschel Walker won the trophy, and Eric Dickerson and John Elway were also finalists, but only Eric Dickerson showed up to join Walker for the show. It was really a far cry from the way players used to be notified that they had won the Heisman. It used to be telegrams and phone calls. 1940 winner Tom Harmon of Michigan found out about the award during a radio appearance with Eddie Cantor in New York, but he had to come back 2 weeks later to receive the actual trophy. When Terry Baker of Oregon State learned of winning the award in 1962, he reportedly said, "No kidding? That's great. I'm a very lucky boy." Then he added, "I've got to get back to class." So the new era of the Heisman Trophy ceremony that started in 1982 just brought a whole different element to it. That doesn't mean there weren't also some interesting ceremonies before that.
It's probably the biggest sports dinner in New York. It's, a couple thousand people at it every year. And all the Heisman winners are invited back every year. So it's a great brotherhood. These guys, it's amazing. Guys that played, years and years ago are still famous because of the Heisman Trophy.
That's Hall of Fame sportscaster Don Criqui, who's been close with the Heisman for decades and served as emcee of the awards receptions for about a quarter of a century, starting with the 1973 ceremony that featured John Cappelletti's famous speech, as well as an introduction from Vice President Gerald Ford.
Well, the first one I was at was in 1973, and when John Cappelletti won, it was a very, very emotional dinner because John's younger brother, Joey, who was sitting at a table right in front of the dais, was critically ill with cancer. And John gave a speech that was very heart-moving. He dedicated a season to his brother, Joey, and won the Heisman. And the room was just floored by the emotion of the whole Cappelletti family and what John was going through, and of course what his brother Joey was. And I thought to myself, I was emceeing the dinner, who could follow up on this? And we had somebody that could, Bishop Fulton Sheehan, who had a nationally syndicated television show, top 10 show, and he got up and I don't know what all he said, but he had some healing remarks, and nobody was ever at the Heisman that night will ever forget it.
Listening to Criqui recall it, the Heisman galas were an almost who's who of mid-century American sports pop culture, with sports celebrities like Yogi Berra, Jim Brown, Bear Bryant, and celebrities like John Wayne in attendance. Since then, and not counting that 1977 interlude, the Heisman Trophy ceremony has never really recaptured that glitz and glamour of yore. Instead, in the post-1982 era of the live ceremony with finalists, the focus has been where it should be, on the players and their accomplishments. So there have only been a handful of changes to the ceremony since 1982. Probably the biggest change came in 2001, following the attacks on 9/11.
Well, Downtown Athletic Club is right there. It was gone. I mean, there was not much that, there was a lot of soot, I guess, or smoke, and a lot of damage to the building.
That's 2001 Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch out of Nebraska, recalling what it was like to be in Lower Manhattan just a few months after the terror attacks.
It was, I didn't get to experience it like everyone else did that won the Heisman Trophy and got to, have their family there, and the event and the TV show and everything kind of centered around the DAC. They brought it up to the Marriott Marquis. And so that was different. But they did one heck of a job. I mean, seeing pictures of the Downtown Athletic Club and they recreated it. I mean, they did a tremendous, I take my hat off to the people that worked effortlessly on that. They did a tremendous job on recreating what the DAC looked like. And, with such a short time to be able to put that together was pretty spectacular.
Since the demise of the Downtown Athletic Club, the Heisman Trophy ceremony has mostly been held at a theater near Times Square. In 1994, ESPN gained exclusive rights to broadcast the ceremony, and over the years, their on-air talent has done a fantastic job of presenting the show. The last couple seasons, it's been no different, with the one exception that the ceremony has moved up to Lincoln Center. And that's your history of the Heisman Trophy ceremony. We hope you tune in on Saturday to ABC to watch this year's episode. Who will win the Heisman? Who will walk up to that stage and give their speech? Speaking of speeches, there's been some great Heisman acceptance speeches over the years, which if you think about it is kind of amazing because these are football players, very young men who haven't really been trained in the arts of writing speeches, much less giving them. Giving a speech in front of millions of people on live television is a very tough thing to do.
An effective speech in general projects the whole spirit, not just the message, but the spirit of the speech maker from a podium to an audience, from one side of a camera lens to another side of a camera lens. You put more into it than just the words. It's a whole personality. And this is maybe the hardest thing to teach because people think of speeches as text. And That's just not true anymore. That hasn't been true since the invention of the microphone and the camera.
That's David Frum, a former presidential speechwriter who is now a writer for the Atlantic magazine. David is a Canadian and doesn't really have much exposure to college football, but I sent him the text and audio of a few standout Heisman speeches so he can tell us why they were so effective. One of those standout speeches was that of 1939 Heisman Trophy winner Nile Kinnick, who, in a time of growing isolationism in America, made a political statement about the war in Europe that had begun just a few months earlier. Here's the speech in its entirety.
Thank you very, very kindly, Mr. Hope. It seems to me that everyone is letting their superlatives run away with them this evening, but nonetheless, I want you to know that I'm mighty, mighty happy to accept this trophy this evening. Every football player in these United States dreams about winning that trophy and of this fine trip to New York. Every player considers that trophy the acme in recognition of this kind. And the fact that I am actually receiving this trophy tonight almost overwhelms me. And I know that all those boys who have gone before me must have felt somewhat the same way. From my own personal viewpoint, I consider my winning this award as indirectly a great tribute to the new coaching staff at the University of Iowa, headed by Dr. Eddie Anderson, and to my teammates sitting back in Iowa City. A finer man and a better coach never hit these United States. And a finer bunch of boys and a more courageous bunch of boys never graced the gridirons of the Midwest than that Iowa team in 1939. I wish that they might all be with me tonight to receive this trophy. They certainly deserve it. I want to take this grand opportunity to thank collectively all the sports writers and all the sportscasters and all those who have seen their way clear to cast a ballot in my favor for this trophy. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Prince and his committee, the Heisman Award Committee, and all those connected with the Downtown Athletic Club for this trophy and for the fine time that they're showing me. And not only for that, but for making this fine and worthy trophy available to the football players of this country. Finally, if you will permit me, I'd like to make a comment which in my mind is indicative perhaps of the greater significance of football and sports emphasis in general in this country, and that is, I thank God I was warring on the gridirons of the Midwest and not on the battlefields of Europe. I can speak confidently and positively that the players of this country would much rather struggle and fight to win the Heisman Award than the Croix de Guerre. Thank you.
Well, there's always a question of appropriateness, because you need to remember when you're there, and this would be whether it's an Academy Award or a football event, why are people there to listen to you? In what capacity have you taxed their time and patience? And maybe there's something you need to say, but maybe you also need to think, if they're here to honor me in one capacity and I tax their time and patience with something different, I'd better consider that, because I may be alienating half the room at a time and place when it's not appropriate to alienate them. You know, there's a saying that a gentleman is someone who never gives offense unintentionally. So sometimes you need to shock people. Sometimes you say, this is something they need to hear whether they want to hear it or not. All right, so December of 1939, so Poland has been bombed to pieces. You know, Warsaw has been ruined and shattered, and the Germans are poised to attack. At that time in December 39, no one knows that France is going to fall, but you're expecting a nightmarish World War I-like conflagration on the battlefields of Western Europe. Like, is that really the point you want to make? And are you quite confident that the offense you're giving to some portion of the audience is worth it? So when you have this extraneous message, you have to really think hard. But people aren't going to like it. Am I going to run that risk? Is this a big enough reason for me to do something that maybe isn't fitting with the spirit of the event?
Kinnick, without a doubt, pulls off this speech in eloquent fashion, even with its potentially controversial subject matter at the very end. But just 2 years later, it was quite the different story when Bruce Smith of Minnesota gave his acceptance speech, just a few days after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, and members of the Downtown Athletic Club, ladies and gentlemen, so much of emotional significance has happened in such a brief space of time that the task of responding on such occasions leaves me at a loss to assign relative values. I want to openly and formally thank those teammates and my coach, for without them this honor would have been absolutely impossible. To them I owe everything. Those Far Eastern fellows may think that American boys are soft, but I have had, and even have now, plenty of evidence in black and blue to show that they are making a big mistake. I think America will owe a great debt to the game of football when we finish this thing off. It keeps millions of American youngsters like myself hard and able to take it and come back for more, both from the physical standpoint and that of morale. It teaches team play and cooperation and eggs us on to go out and fight hard for the honor of our school, and likewise, the same spirit can be depended on when we have to fight like blazes to defend our country.
Well, so many people of that generation change their minds. Well, he's also speaking to something that was very much in the air at that time, because, you know, you look back on it, and Pearl Harbor was about the stupidest thing the Japanese could have done. The way the Japanese talked themselves into this crazy, into self-destructive attack was by propagandizing to their people that the Americans were soft and decadent and flabby, and you could bomb their fleet and nothing too bad would happen afterwards. And so I think he was speaking against a kind of message that Americans had heard from their now enemies in the time leading up to the Pearl Harbor attack.
Arguably the most famous speech in Heisman history came 32 years later, in 1973, when Penn State's John Cappelletti won the Heisman Trophy. After being introduced by Vice President Gerald R. Ford, Cappelletti gave a somewhat normal speech that finished off with emotional, gut-wrenching words about his younger brother Joey, who had leukemia. Here's the tail end of Ford's introduction of Cappelletti, who, by the way, is being celebrated at this year's Heisman Dinner Gala for the 50th anniversary of his Heisman Trophy victory. Following Ford is Cappelletti's speech in its entirety.
The Heisman Trophy symbolizes individual athletic accomplishments in football. And we shouldn't apologize for it. We should be very proud of it. A player wins it, as John Cappelletti won it, and all of these others, through the intense competition with other players, the length and the breadth of our country. And he wins it because he puts a little extra effort into the accomplishments for himself, but primarily for his team. And I think John Cappelletti said it very well in a recent interview. He told how he had been ready to quit the Penn State team in 1972 because he wasn't picking up enough yardage. But he kept trying through the season of 1972, and he finally gained 124 yards against Illinois. And let me quote what John said. I learned a lesson that if you stick with something longer than you think you can, things will work out for you, end quote. And I think that's right.
Don't leave it with me.
A week ago, or 10 days ago, when the Heisman Trophy was announced, since then I haven't had too much time to think about what it has meant. I think listening to the former Heisman Trophy winners tonight and seeing everyone here to share in it and congratulate me on it, I think that's one of the first steps that I've taken in the meaning of this trophy. I'm sure that the people behind me know much more about it than I do, and I'm happy for any advice that they've given tonight and on what to expect from the future with this trophy. I have had time to think about some things that have put me up here tonight, things that have happened in my life, and I'd like to reflect a little bit on them now. I think the first thing that happened to me was God blessed me with a great deal of talent and a lot of people to complement that talent. My family, as everyone's met, mostly I guess, they're just great people, and I'm very happy to have shared in my lifetime with them. My brothers and sisters, it's been wonderful. Just being with you the past few years, they've always been behind me, and I can't express that enough. My mother and father, there isn't a greater couple around, I don't think, and I know my mother always cries at these affairs, so I'm going to try not to. She's a very, very strong woman and very dedicated not only to her children and husband, but also to God, and I think this helps her out with putting up with us and going through all that she's gone through. One example, I think one small example of this is a personal thing with me that I think a lot of people may have noticed that my legs are as straight as arrows, and that I have no trouble walking now or running now, but at one time in my life I couldn't walk without tripping. And my mother not only brought me through this, but she brought just about every member of our family through something like this. My father's a very quiet man. He's been a great father to all of us. He asked me the other day, when I was home one of the few times, how he thought I felt of him as a father. And I wouldn't say much to him then, because it's hard to express things like that. But there is no greater person, and no person I have more respect for than this man. I think the next event that was most important to me in my life was when I went to high school, and I was fortunate enough to be coached by a man who dedicated himself not only to his players on the field, but very much so off the field. He was a great lover of football, but he'd sacrifice anything for a teammate or a player when he was playing and when he was coaching. He passed away this summer, Jack Gottschalk, but I think in the 43 years that he was here on Earth, he did more for young people and people he was associated with than I think most of us get a chance to do in a lifetime. The next step, I think, was I was going to Penn State. It was a hard decision, making a choice of colleges at the time. I didn't know that much about it. But I think one thing that swayed me was the man sitting to my right, and that's Coach Paterno. When I was being recruited, he came down to my house. I think he was not only on a recruiting trip, but he was looking for a good meal, an Italian meal. When he came in the door, he looked over and on the couch, my brother, Joseph, was lying there. He was very ill at the time, and more so than usual. And instead of that's not a joke, but Coach Paterno, was more concerned and talk more about what he could do for my brother than what he could do to get me at Penn State. And for this, I'm very thankful, and I'm glad I had the chance to show some appreciation to this man in the last 4 years. I think everybody here knows mostly about his coaching accomplishments at Penn State. His record is a great one, probably the greatest in the country. But he's carried on a great tradition at Penn State, I think, which started with Rip Engel. And he's more concerned with young people after they get out of school and while they're in school, what he can do for them to make better lives for them, not only on the football field, but in life itself. I think Vice President Ford said you can't compare life to a football game, but I think you can compare a football game to life. And this is what he's tried to show us in my 4 years there and in the years he's been there coaching and teaching. And I don't think there's a more dedicated man anywhere concerned with young people and a better teacher of life on and off the field. The next group of people I'm going to talk about, I've been with for 4 years, and I've played with them. They're my teammates this year, the seniors, and the co-captains who you've met down here. I don't think I've been closer to a group of people who I've worked with, sweated with, and have done more with in 4 years than I've done with anybody in my lifetime. I don't think I could have gotten any closer to the group that I've been with. And I think that it takes a lot of hard work to do what we've done this year. And I'm just glad that I did my part for my teammates and that we've had the season we've had, and we've had the closeness that we've had. And for them, I'm thankful for that. Also, there's a coach here tonight who I'm very proud of. He's our backfield coach at Penn State. His name is Bob Phillips. And I think he's mainly responsible for a lot of the attitude that goes on at Penn State among the players. He's a very dedicated man to his work, but he goes about it with a healthy and just a bright attitude, and he can relay this to the players to the point where you want to do things for them, and you take the attitude that you're not out there just to get something finished and go in and take a shower, but you're out there to accomplish something. And people like him are the reason that I think that a lot of the players, and I know myself, were out there this year doing the things we did, and I'd like to thank him for that. The next part, I'm very happy to do something like this. I thought about it since the Heisman was announced 10 days ago. And this is a dedicated trophy that a lot of people have earned. I've earned, my parents, the people I've mentioned, and numerous other people that are here tonight and been with me for a long time. The youngest member of my family, Joseph, is very ill. He has leukemia. And if I could dedicate this trophy to him tonight and give him a couple days of happiness, this is worth everything. I think a lot of people think that I go through a lot on Saturdays and during the week, as most athletes do. You get your bumps and bruises, and it's a terrific battle out there in the field. But only for me, it's on Saturdays, and it's only in the fall. For Joseph, it's all year round, and it's a battle that's unending with him, and he puts up with much more than I'll ever put up. And I think that this trophy is more of his than it is mine, because he's been a great inspiration to me. I'd just like to thank everyone here tonight for putting up with me. The Downtown Athletic Club for having this affair and the way they treated myself and my parents and the guests of Penn State these last 2 days. I don't think I'll ever forget this night. Thank you.
Well, I learned from you just beforehand that this was quite a new thing in sports speeches. And it makes a kind of sense to me. I wrote a history of the 1970s. It was published about 20 years ago. And one of the themes of that book was that it was a period, the people who'd been through the Depression and the Second World War bit back a lot of the emotion. They had so much emotion to discuss. And there's a famous quote from Ernest Hemingway, I guess after the First World War, where he said that when you confronted what they had confronted, that words like glory and honor and sacrifice seemed cheap and hollow. And so there was a style, and everyone who's seen the series Mad Men can see people performing in this style of bite it back. Don't be too religious in public. Don't be too emotional in public. Don't show grief or joy too much in public. Just everything is kind of wry and restrained and sardonic. And generations shift, and then generational styles change. And suddenly in the 1970s, we have this opening. It would have been very familiar to people of the 1870s, by the way, but very strange to people of the 1930s and 40s. We have this opening where emotion begins to flow again. And the power, I think, of that speech is when you read it, he doesn't say that much. But when you hear it, you can hear how much feeling there is behind what is said. And that's an example of how the whole person can add so much to a text that maybe on its own face, you wonder, why did this have the effect it did?
I asked Frum what makes these kinds of speeches so powerful. Why did they stick with us? Why are they ingrained in our memory?
Well, I confessed to you earlier my general ignorance of sport, but my impression is that from a very early time, Americans formed cults of personality around baseball players. And more recently, they formed cults of personality around basketball players. And both of those sports are ones where you see the face while the person is on the field or in action. And also at their great, great moments, especially the hitter and especially the basketball scorer, they are acting seemingly alone. And in fact, the hitter is that most powerful of all scenarios, the man against the one against the many. There he is, facing a whole field of opponents, and he has his solo act. So that's very inspiring. A football player, of course, is all encased, face hidden, head hidden, body distorted, and he's part of a line against another line. And that's what gives the sport, I suppose, its tactical complexity. But it also robs the player of the individuality and makes him a little bit less of a focus of personality than a baseball or basketball player would be. And so these moments where they come out from behind the mask would be correspondingly powerful.
In all my years of following the Heisman Trophy, one thing I've noticed is that in the days leading up to the Heisman Trophy, many of the winners are shy in front of media or they don't speak well. But when they get up on that stage, they transform. They transform into this new person. And it's really an amazing thing to observe. And I've always wondered how this happens so often at the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Here's Frum's explanation for why this happens.
But of all people in the world, pro athletes or athletes should be the best prepared to deal with that situation, because their job every day is going onto a field with no idea whether they're going to come off a winner or a loser. So, it's one thing to be a politician who is preparing for 2 or 4 years for a competition, and maybe the one and only time in their life where they either win or lose. And it's not to be an athlete. I mean, literally every time you do this is what happens. You win or lose. So you should be ready for that. And so I would think an athlete would be well positioned to have the concession speech and the acceptance speech, both prepared, both ready, and be psychologically prepared to meet both contingencies.
Well, coming up this Saturday night, the 2025 Heisman Trophy winner will deliver his acceptance speech in front of millions. And maybe, just maybe, people will still be talking about his words for decades to come. The Heisman Trophy podcast streams every Wednesday during the college football season and is hosted, produced, edited, and engineered by Chris Houston. The pod is available on all streaming networks, including Spotify and Apple Music, and features video interviews and bonus content on YouTube and TikTok. We also have a Reddit community. Special shout out to Isaac Lowenkron, and big thanks to Rob Whalen, Tim Henning, and the Heisman Trust for their support. Reach out to us via email at pod@heisman.com for feedback and commentary.